Hi, I'm Jim, and I'm going to ride my bicycle around my backyard. Or is it my front yard? Well, anyway, it's 9 miles of remarkable great places to see. Come along for the ride. This is just an informal ride around the National Mall, and I'm literally just a few minutes away on bike-friendly roads. The sights? Well, they're familiar, whether you've been here before or have just seen them in pictures, TV, or movies. Formally established in 1965, the National Mall is home to museums, monuments, the seat of U.S. government, and large sweeping green spaces. All around 6,547 acres are government and private sector office buildings, restaurants, and homes. This 9-mile ride starts right here on the east side of the U.S. Capitol. Capitol Hill, well, it's its own place, but it feels like a good place to start. Congress first met in the Capitol in 1800 after George Washington himself laid the cornerstone to this majestic building in 1793. The Library of Congress and the Supreme Court are just across the street. The massive dome was in place around 1866, just after the Civil War. Over its more than 200 years, the Capitol has undergone several renovations, with its last extension back in 1962, and most recently a huge underground visitor center. The west side of the Capitol opens toward the expanse of the mall, toward the Lincoln Memorial and Potomac River. The Peace Monument is at the northwest corner of the hill. It memorializes naval officers, seamen, and Marines who served and died for Union forces during the Civil War. The divisive battles between 1861 and 1865 are a prominent theme throughout the National Mall. It's fitting a naval memorial is next to water. This reflection pond was actually part of a canal that once flowed along what is now Constitution Avenue. Water not only flowed through the center of the city, the banks of the Potomac River were next to the Washington Monument. Yeah, it was really a swamp. We'll come back as this trip loops around the perimeter of the mall. Riding along the north side on Madison Drive, we first come to the National Gallery of Art, with the East Building dedicated to contemporary works. You'll find more traditional masterworks farther down in the main building. There's even a Leonardo da Vinci painting in there. It's one of my favorites. If a building's being renovated, well, you can always check out the other side. If you're more inclined to stay outside, there's an adjacent sculpture garden. And in the winter, an ice rink. The Natural History Museum is always a favorite. You don't even have to go inside to see a 200 million year old artifact right in front of the entrance. Of course, inside there are plenty of items, like dinosaur bones, gems and minerals, and the famous Hope Diamond. Of course, much more. It's among the top 5 visited museums in the world. Take a walk through the National Museum of American History and trace some of the highlights of this country's illustrious history. From First Ladies' gowns to American pop culture, artifacts of the past, there's a fascinating piece of U.S. history at every turn. Continuing west, our location is always measured in relation to the ever-present Washington Monument. Here's the newest stop on the mall, the National Museum of African American History and Culture. It opened in 2016. Definitely a must-see. It's one of the locations that has timed entry, so go online and get your free tickets ahead of time. Briefly riding north, we pass by a remnant of the C&O Canal extension on the way to the Ellipse, location of the 0-mile marker, and where the National Christmas Tree lives. It's a live planted tree on the border of the White House grounds. It's tradition every year for the president to light the tree, and yes, the president can see it out the window. We're back at the iconic crossroad of the National Mall, where the Washington Monument towers over the entire city. First private and then public construction was interrupted by funding shortfalls and the Civil War. You can visibly see the different construction eras in the different stone colors. Since its completion in 1884, this soaring landmark obelisk is a definitive iconic symbol of Washington, D.C. It was for a while the tallest building in the world, at 555 feet and 1/8 inches tall, and towers over all else in the city. Of course, with unparalleled, commanding 360-degree views. Continuing west are several war memorials. It's also an area with trees, gardens, and water, highlighted by Constitution Gardens and the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool. The World War II Memorial honors what is called the Greatest Generation, and fittingly occupies a rare Central Mall location. Divided into the war's two major theaters, the Atlantic and Pacific, the memorial gracefully maintains the overall sightline while evoking heroic details of thousands of individuals fighting for the common cause of freedom and peace. For the United States, those ideals were first embodied in the Declaration of Independence. Those who sign that bold document are remembered on Signers Island, with their signatures displayed to all who visit. The Vietnam Memorial is a solemn reminder of veterans who paid the ultimate price overseas, in a conflict that often stigmatized those who returned home. More than 58,000 names are engraved on the wall in chronological order of their deaths. Visitors can locate names by referencing books on site. Eight military women and more than 50 civilian women were killed in Vietnam. They're remembered with the first memorial in the nation's capital that honored women's military service. Anchoring the western end of the mall is the Lincoln Memorial. Opened in 1922, it is an iconic tribute to the martyred 16th U.S. President, who guided the nation through the Civil War and freed 4 million enslaved persons. Through the decades, the monument has been the center of many huge gatherings. The view east is one of the most photographed places in the world. On the western side at the Watergate Steps and Potomac River, we head back along the southern side of the mall. You know, this entire area was once underwater, but filled in over time as dirt from construction of the city's buildings formed new ground for today's enjoyment. Just south of the reflecting pool is the Korean War Veterans Memorial, honoring the service and sacrifice of U.S. military veterans who defended a country they didn't know and a people they had not met. The wide open spaces of the mall were not always here. Temporary U.S. Navy buildings filled this area during World War II. Simply called the Great War in its time, World War I is remembered with the D.C. War Memorial. The names of 499 Washington residents who died in the war are inscribed in alphabetical order, with no distinction made to rank, race, or gender. The 44-foot diameter Vermont marble structure was intended to accommodate the entire Marine Band for tribute concerts. It's now popular for weddings. West Potomac Park is a perennial recreation area nestled against part of the tidal basin, filled with its famous cherry trees. And in the area is the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, literally within earshot of where he stood to deliver his famous speech on the Lincoln Memorial steps. The prominent civil rights leader is one of 4 non-presidents honored on the National Mall with a distinct memorial. Along the tidal basin, we find the Franklin Delano Roosevelt Memorial. The 32nd U.S. president guided the nation through the Great Depression and most of World War II, and the only president to serve 4 terms in office. The red South Dakota granite memorial winds along part of the Cherry Tree Walk. Also honored in the tidal basin is Founding Father George Mason, author of the country's first Bill of Rights. This simple, elegant memorial is often overlooked, and as such is truly a hidden gem on the National Mall. Literally next door is the iconic memorial to the 3rd U.S. President, Thomas Jefferson. Author of the Declaration of Independence, architect of modern U.S. democracy, and responsible for the nation's expansion west, Jefferson set a course that would last centuries. His statue resolutely keeps watch directly toward the White House, as if to keep its current occupant on notice. As the ride returns to the east-west axis of the mall, check out the Floral Library along Independence Avenue. Here you'll see seasonal blooms depending on the time of year you visit. The original plan for downtown Washington featured grand European-style boulevards crisscrossing and intersecting in squares and circles. Much of the modern streets remain true to that basic plan, but the mall area would become more of a Victorian garden filled with trees and winding paths. It then gave way to a bold plan to create a wide open space, which is what we see today. The U.S. Department of Agriculture occupies some prime real estate heading back east. It's the only building on the mall not intended for use by the general public. The Freer Gallery of Art, together with the Arthur M. Sackler Gallery, formed the National Museum of Asian Art, housing objects dating from Neolithic times to the early 20th century. Completed in 1855, the Smithsonian Castle is the signature building of the Smithsonian Institution, and since its founding, the Smithsonian has become the world's largest museum, education, and research complex, with 21 museums, the National Zoo, and 9 research facilities. Wonderful gardens are here too. Contemporary art is here at the Hirshhorn Museum, which also has an impressive outdoor sculpture garden. The Hirshhorn provides a national platform for art and artists of our time. Continuing east is the National Air and Space Museum, already housing decades of fascinating exploration of the final frontier. Actual spacecraft, famous airplanes, and even a moon rock you can touch are inside. The National Museum of the American Indian is a distinctive recent addition to the National Mall, opened in 2004. It's devoted to the culture of indigenous peoples of the Americas. Featuring distinctive landscaping, the museum was designed in collaboration with tribes and communities to give visitors from around the world the sense and spirit of Native America. As we ride back to Capitol Hill, the U.S. Botanical Garden lets you wander through groves of exotic plants. And of course, it's always a holiday favorite at the end of the year. President James A. Garfield was assassinated just 4 months into his term in 1881. A statue in his likeness, not far from where he was shot, is a memorial to the 20th U.S. president. Although Garfield's wound was not immediately fatal, an infection from his doctor's unsanitary practices killed him 2 months later. Ulysses S. Grant, Union General and the 18th U.S. President, stands guard at the base of Capitol Hill. He's looking west toward the memorial to his wartime president, Abraham Lincoln. The memorials define the eastern and western ends of the National Mall. Even though quite large, space on the National Mall is very precious, so any additions are carefully thought out and well planned, like the 2 newest museums that we've gone past. In recent years, areas just off the mall have been reclaimed from the city, like the Dwight D. Eisenhower Memorial. The tribute to the 34th president tells the story of one of the country's greatest leaders of the 20th century, on land that used to be part of Maryland Avenue. I used to regularly park there. Green space on neighboring C Street was created on a former federal building parking lot. Plans remain to do the same on the other side of the street at some point if the current tenants move elsewhere. Voice of America has been in this location for about 70 years after relocating from New York City.
Thanks for joining the ride on the U.S. National Mall in Washington, D.C. And be sure to follow Great Places Seen to the next destination.